Chapter 69, 4th Year, April. Saturday the 26th of April, 1975. "Remus Lupin, put that book down at once!" Madame Pomfrey's shrill, tired voice echoed across the infirmary floor. Remus dropped the heavy textbook, looking up, startled. "Can you see through that screen?" he called back. He had thought he was practically alone. "No," she replied. "I just know you too well." She appeared, stepping around the pale green hospital screens. It was lighter, beyond them. Pomfrey had cast a spell which had created a capsule of darkness around Remus's bed, so that he could get some sleep, she said. She snatched the book up, now, giving him a stern look. "I had hoped you'd be resting your eyes, not straining them." "I can see in the dark," he shrugged. It was true. No matter how much punishment his body took, his eyes remained perfect. Better than perfect, even. "No excuse," Madame Pomfrey tutted. "As you're up, I suppose you're ready for visitors." "Yeah, of course." He sat up eagerly, straightening his nightshirt. "Come on, then," she called to James, Sirius and Peter, who appeared single file from behind the screen. "Not too much noise, and no books." "Why can't you have books?" James asked, leaning over the end of the bed frame. "Because it's Moony," Sirius said, flinging himself bodily across the small single bed, right over Remus's legs. "He doesn't understand moderation." "I just want to revise," Remus sighed, rubbing the back of his head. I'm at school. That's what I'm supposed to do." He accepted the chocolate frog from Peter, who was handing them out. "You don't want to burn out, though," Sirius said, his own mouth full of chocolate. "You're miles ahead of the rest of the class, and exams aren't for ages." "They're 2 weeks away," James said, nibbling at his own piece of chocolate, surprisingly daintily. "You could do with being a bit better prepared, Black." "Oh, I am sorry." Sirius rolled his blue eyes dramatically, rolling onto his back. Remus winced. "I'd forgot you'd joined the SWAT club too." "1 afternoon in the library does not make me a SWAT," James frowned, clearly deeply offended. "Don't listen to him, James." Remus grinned. "I'm proud of you." "Thanks for the frogs, Pete." "Oh, they're not from me," Peter said, settling into the armchair beside the bed. "Desi says she hopes you get well soon." Remus, Sirius and James all turned their heads at once. "Desi?" Sirius said, sitting up. "You mean Desdemona?" Yeah." Peter stopped chomping chocolate and started looking nervous. "She asked me why I couldn't see her today, so I told her I was seeing Moony." "What?" He looked from James to Sirius. "I didn't say anything about why he was sick. I just said, 'You idiot!'" Sirius jumped down from the bed. "Sirius," Remus hissed. If they were too loud, Madame Pomfrey would chase them out. "It's fine, really." "It's not fine," Sirius seethed. He was standing over Peter now. "You can't go telling everyone Remus is in the hospital wing. Not everyone is as slow on the uptake as you. Doesn't the word secret mean anything to you?" "You know it does," Peter said, jutting out his chin, his lower lip trembling. "I've kept all sorts of—" He glanced furtively at Remus, then changed tact. "Anyway, Desi's not everyone. She's my girlfriend." "So what?" Sirius raged. "You're going to tell every tart that lets you stick your slimy tongue down her throat." Peter's eyes filled with furious tears. He sniffed hard and rubbed his nose, standing up. "Just because I've got a girlfriend, just because some of us actually like spending time with girls." Sirius's face seemed to transform into a new terrible kind of rage that Remus had never seen before. His heart was pounding a mile a minute. Remus could hear it clear as a bell. "What are you trying to say, Pettigrew?" "That I'd rather be with Desi than you lot right now." "Sorry, Remus," Peter said very quickly, before departing, storming out of the ward with a newly confident stride. There was a steely silence, and Remus found he couldn't bring himself to look at Sirius. Whatever emotion he was working through seemed like something which ought to be private. He looked at James instead, still standing at the foot of the bed, chewing his lip. He met Remus's eye and gave him a reassuring smile. "Moody pair of buggers, yeah?" He broke the tension. "Anyway, how are you feeling? Moon go okay?" "Yeah, no scars." Remus nodded, slowly, aware of Sirius's heart still beating loudly at his shoulder. "Nothing's broken either. Maybe I'm finally getting good at being a werewolf." "What did he mean?" Sirius said suddenly, turning to look at James. "I dunno, mate," Peter shrugged. "Don't listen to him. He gave as good as he got. You just miffed because he finally stuck up for himself." "He meant something," Sirius muttered. "How's Quidditch going?" Remus asked quickly. "Ready for the final?" James's brow smoothed instantly, and he straightened up, eager to tell Remus all about his big plans for the upcoming Ravenclaw game. The Slytherin-Gryffindor rematch had taken place in late March, and much to everyone's surprise, Regulus Black had resumed his role as Seeker. James had quietly told Remus afterwards that Regulus had threatened half of the Slytherins with painful disfigurement charms if word got back to Walpurga that he was back on the team. Gryffindor had won by only 5 points, which was lucky, because Remus couldn't imagine Sirius being in a worse mood than he already was. Things had not been good. For his part, Remus had been trying to be extra kind to Sirius ever since February. Though Remus had always known that the Blacks were far from an ideal, nurturing family unit, he had always sort of assumed that it couldn't be that bad. After all, in his experience, adults were there to maintain order, to instruct, and to punish. James had had an extremely cushy time of it, as far as Remus was concerned, so it had made sense that he was sympathetic towards Sirius. Perhaps it was maturity, or perhaps it was having seen bright, vivacious Sirius brought low by his own mother. But Remus was finally beginning to understand that whatever went on in the noble and ancient House of Black was not normal. In fact, it was entirely unacceptable. The fact that Sirius had survived under such oppression for so long without turning into Snape, or just cracking under the weight of it all, was remarkable. Remus knew how hard it was to push against other people's expectations, against your own nature sometimes. It was starting to show, though. Maybe since Remus's birthday, after Sirius had got himself so horrendously drunk and they had holed up together in that cold tunnel. Though that might have just been when Remus first noticed it. It could well have started after Regulus's fall. But there had been a definite shift. Sirius was tired, worn out, like Remus felt after a moon. Some of the fight had left him, that much was clear. He still got angry, but it came in short bursts, and he would quickly sink into a dark and quiet mood. The late-night conversations with James had resumed too. Remus was not invited. He didn't exactly expect to be, but he had thought that they'd got a bit closer that year, and that maybe Sirius would choose to confide in both of them. But the only thing Sirius seemed to want from Remus these days was cigarettes. If Remus had the heart to charge him, he might have made a fortune. Sirius was rarely without a fag behind his ear or between his lips. "Teenage mood swings," Lily had said decisively, when Marlene mentioned that Sirius seemed out of sorts. "Honestly," the redhead sighed, tossing her hair, "he acts like everything that happens to him is some sort of drama, but he's no different from the rest of us. Hormones." "Well," Mary frowned, "his family is a bit of a nightmare, dark wizards and that. Can't be easy with everything that's going on in the papers." "Sirius isn't a dark wizard," Remus said immediately. "I know that," Mary snapped. "I just meant that he might be feeling a bit torn, that's all." She'd been snapping at Remus a lot since Snape's Veritaserum prank. Even though Remus had apologised profusely and many times, he couldn't deny that the things he'd said had been the truth. "Sorry," he said again, ducking his head. "You're right. He hasn't got it easy." "You of all people shouldn't pity him, Remus," Lily huffed, slamming down an entirely new pile of revision books. "What's that supposed to mean?" He's had every advantage over you and still can't be a nice person, she said, dividing the books up between the four of them. He's ridiculously wealthy, pure blood, old magic, privately educated, has both of his parents. Ugh, he and Potter are so... James and Sirius are not that alike, was the only response Remus had. It seemed like everyone was in a bad mood. In the hospital wing, James had finally run out of things to say about the Ravenclaw match, which was scheduled for early May, just before exams started. He seemed to have noticed that Remus had tuned out and had fallen silent. Sirius was bored too, and had started to try and transfigure various items around the bed. A lamp, an unused bedpan, the empty vase on the nightstand. Sorry, Remus said. It's a bit boring for you two here. You don't have to stay. Nonsense, James waved a hand carelessly. Nothing else to do around here. Ravenclaw have booked the pitch for the rest of the day, and Sirius won't come to the library with me, so... Potter had started putting extra effort into his studies that year for the first time, much to Sirius's disappointment. At first, Remus had thought it was another ploy to get close to Lily, but James never asked to be involved in their study group, and actually appeared to prefer working alone. He told them that his parents had threatened to take his broom away for the summer if his results weren't better than last year, but Sirius had whispered to Remus afterwards that actually, McGonagall had warned him that if he didn't pull his socks off, he wouldn't get a chance at being Quidditch captain. You can quiz me if you want, Remus said, cheering up a bit. Ask me stuff about potions. Then I'll do whichever subject you want. History, James sighed. I am crap at history. Well, if you're going to do that, I'll go, Sirius said, hauling himself up. I'm crap at all of it. No, you're not. Don't be stupid. Nah, I'm off. Sirius shook his head, distracted. Maybe I'll go and find some nice girls to hang around with, since that's so important to everyone. Since when has stuff Peter said to you bothered you? Remus frowned, but it was too late. Sirius was already leaving. Remus looked at James. James ran a hand through his hair. Sorry, Moony. Just ignore him. It's not you or Pete, come to that. Well, he got an owl from his home this morning. Oh, right. Remus looked down. He should have realised. Yeah, they've told him he's going to go home for the whole summer this year. Learn his family duty once and for all. All rubbish. And he says he's going to be really bored, but I don't know. I think he's scared, to be honest. Everyone says they're in pretty deep with you-know-who. He'll be okay, though, won't he? Remus fiddled with the corner of his bedsheet anxiously. They can't force him to marry anyone again, and he's not of age yet, so he can't join up or whatever. James shrugged. He looked very tired too. I don't know, mate, he said softly. I don't know what they want. Anyway, I'm not going anywhere. Let's start with potions, shall we? Chapter 70, 4th year, Partings. Thursday, the 29th of May, 1975. The exam period seemed to fly by that year. Remus felt as though he'd got into the swing of things for the first time and, though he didn't like to rest on his laurels, was relatively certain he had achieved decent marks all around. Even potions had been less stressful than usual, thanks to Lily's careful guidance and patient coaching throughout the year. In fact, by the 3rd week of May, Remus found himself at something of a loose end. He had completed all of his tests, but none of his friends had. Between Muggle studies and divinations, the Marauders and the girls were still cloistered away studying or in the exam hall. He was far from lonely. Remus spent his free time taking leisurely walks around the ground, reading whatever and whenever he felt like it, and putting the finishing touches to his greatest accomplishment, the Marauders map. It'd been almost 4 full years in the making, but Remus's original rudimentary map of Hogwarts had expanded and developed until it presented a comprehensive view of the entire castle, secret entrances, tunnels, and hidden chambers included. With the Marauders' help, it now moved and shifted in time with the rhythm of the building itself, located and identified every being present in the castle. It worked beautifully. Remus had never been more proud of anything in his life. Indeed, he had never created anything worth being proud of. It still needed some kind of locking spell. At present, he was able to have the ink disappear and reappear with a quick disillusionment charm, but this was not enough. Not if it was to leave their dorm room. That would be something to research over the summer. He had already spoken to Madame Pince about borrowing a few books, with the understanding that he would reimburse her in full for any damage should it occur. Remus was looking forward to the summer, perhaps even less than usual. Now that he was fully aware of the political climate in the wizarding world, he found the thought of stepping outside of it for 2 months very disconcerting. Who knew what could happen in the meantime? Say nothing of the danger his friends might find themselves in. For the first summer since 1972, the marauders would be completely separated. Sirius had been forbidden from seeing the Potters. Remus would be at St. Edmund's as usual, for his own safety, and the Pettigrews were going to America to visit Philomena. Peter suspected to try and bring her home. Sirius's situation was the most concerning. James had tried everything, even writing to Dumbledore, but no one was willing or able to override the Black family's wishes. Even Sirius had resigned himself somewhat to his fate. "I'll have Reg," he sighed heavily. "Maybe if he's not surrounded by Slytherins all the time, he'll listen to a bit of reason. He's old enough now." Remus had promised to write, every day if Sirius wanted him to. Even Mary had offered to try and visit, as she lived in London too. Of course, she was Muggle-born, and it was entirely out of the question. James actually had an escape plan ready to enact the moment Sirius gave the word. It involved a complex chain of communication, his broom, and breaking at least 10 wizarding laws. But they were all ready to do it. Even Peter, who had forgiven Sirius and his outburst in April, and had been forgiven in turn. Remus thought about how to spend his own summer, and had already decided that he would not be repeating the events of last year. Not that he would turn down the chance to earn a bit of cash if it came his way. His plans to hunt down Greyback had not altered, and would still need financing. But he also needed to stay focused. Staying out all night drinking and fighting was not productive, nor did it solve any of his problems. He also knew that he needed to keep a low profile for as long as possible, and getting himself arrested for petty crime was not a clever move. Having spent a fair bit of time indoors lately completing the map, and the weather being neither too hot nor cold for May, Remus decided to venture out into the grounds to read. He had finally read all of the Muggle books Sirius had brought with him to Hogwarts in their first year, and was now borrowing from Lily. She was a big Jane Austen fan, which was a shame, as Remus wasn't, but he was making do with Emma all the same. He sat under the dappled shade of a big beech tree by the lake, with his back to the Whomping Willow. As he'd feared, Remus soon grew bored of Miss Woodhouse's dreadful prattling. It turned out the stupid book was all about matchmaking, and he'd had plenty of that already this year, thank you very much. He put the book down and leaned against the trunk, looking up at the brilliant green leaves, his eyelids slowly shutting. He had a very strange dream, though Remus would think to himself much later, all dreams were pretty odd, weren't they? He couldn't remember exactly what was going on in the dream, or where he was, or who was with him. But there was perhaps another person, another body at least, very close to his own. It was an intensely physical sensation, similar to his memories of being the wolf, but undoubtedly more pleasant. The way this other body fitted against his was deeply soothing, warm, and satisfying, in a way he'd never felt before. Remus wasn't sure how long he'd slept for, but when he awoke, there was chatter all around him. One of the exams had obviously finished, and students were pouring out onto the grounds, exulting in their hard-won freedom. Remus blinked against the bright summer sunlight and straightened up, a bit embarrassed to have dozed off, not to mention the physical reaction the weird dream had prompted. He quickly rearranged his robes, looking about to check no one had noticed. His back was stiff and sore now from leaning against the trunk, his mouth was dry, and his left foot had gone numb. He stretched out and shook it, wincing as pins and needles shot up his leg. "Whatcha, Remus?" A gruff Liverpudlian accent came from behind him. "Not sleeping, were you?" "No," he said at once, as Firox came into view. Remus grabbed up Emma and tried to pretend he had only put it down for a moment. Firox smiled at him knowingly, but didn't make fun. He set down a heavy bucket of something slimy which smelt foul. "Came to say goodbye to the squid." He nodded at the lake, which was as still as a mill pond. "Are you going away for the summer, Professor?" Remus asked, mildly interested, as he rubbed his leg to get the blood flowing again. Firox nodded, squinting out the lake. "The summer, and maybe longer. Afraid I won't see you in September." "What?" Remus blinked, startled. "But who'll teach us care of magical creatures?" "Professor Kettleburn will be back. I was only ever filling in for him." Oh. Remus had sort of known that all along, but it still came as a shock. He felt horribly sad. He'd never had to say goodbye to anyone he knew he'd missed before. He had the strong urge to tell Firox this, to tell him how much he wished he would stay, but the words wouldn't come. "It's a pity," was all he could muster. He stood up, shakily, legs still sore. Firox dipped a hand into the bucket of slimy, silvery things and withdrew something long and wriggly. He flung it into the lake, and 2 tentacles broke the water's surface to catch it. Firox smiled. "I won't lie, I'll miss this place," he said, reaching in for another one. Squelch. He glanced at Remus. "And my best class, of course." It's my favourite subject," Remus said, all in a hot rush. "I should think so," Firox grinned, throwing another silvery thing. Splash. "Not supposed to tell you your results until August, but, well, I'm bloody proud of you, Lupin. Top marks, best in the year. Better than plenty of my owl students." "You're a good teacher," Remus said sadly. "So's Kettleburn," Firox reassured him, still feeding the squid. Squelch. Splash. "Where you going? Back to the ministry?" "Ah, no." Firox's expression changed. He didn't frown exactly, but his features darkened, the smile faded. "I've some business for Dumbledore. Not sure the ministry would... Anyway, it's not for you to worry about." He shook his head, then smiled again, looking down at Remus. "I'll be abroad for a while." Squelch. Splash. Remus wondered if he would ever see Professor Firox again. He still wasn't quite sure how big the wizarding community really was, but he didn't think it could be very large, not if there was only one school in Britain. Would it be okay to write to Firox, or was that inappropriate? He wouldn't write to someone like McGonagall, for example, or Professor Slughorn. "I'll be asking Kettleburn for updates, you know," Firox said, reading his mind. "So don't think you can start slacking. Us dead-end oiks have to show the rest of the posh knobs how it's done, yeah? Now more than ever." "I won't slack off," Remus said fiercely. "I promise." Firox laughed and nudged Remus with an elbow. "Good lad. Your dad'd be proud." Friday, the 27th of June, 1975. It was the last Friday of term. All of the exams and lessons were finished for another year, and Remus had made a mental list of all of the packing he needed to do. This year, he and James had conspired together to ensure that all of Sirius's got done in time. James was gradually warming to the idea of letting Remus help when it came to Sirius's welfare. They planned that on Saturday morning, James and Peter would take him out for a few hours flying, while Remus would sort through everything. He'd promised he didn't mind. Anything that might help. They were all sitting around at dinner, nothing special, just fish pie. The feast wouldn't be until Sunday night, when the owls began to fly in for last post. "Ugh!" Sirius groaned as a large brown eagle owl landed in front of him. One of the black family owls. "I'll do it!" James jumped in quickly, tugging the small scroll wrapped around the bird's scaly leg. He pushed his round glasses back on his nose, and his eyes darted quickly across the paper. Then he shrugged and scrunched it up, tossing it over his shoulder. "Just making sure you know you have to meet them at King's Cross. They're expecting you and Regulus to be together." "Worried I'll pull another disappearing act," Sirius smirked. Will you? Peter asked nervously. Not worth it, Sirius sighed. Bet they'll be there early just to spite me. I'll have to come up with another way to piss them off. Or you could just try and keep your head down and make it through summer, Remus suggested lightly, finishing his ice cream. Sirius just raised an eyebrow at him. Remus poked his tongue out. They both knew that was pretty much impossible, even if Sirius tried his very best. They didn't have long to feel sorry for Sirius, however. Mary, who had also received some post, let out a shriek, then burst into tears. The owl in front of her hopped back, alarmed, then gave an offended hoot and flapped away to the owlery. Mary! Lily and Marlene both said at once. What's wrong? Mary shook her head, apparently speechless, then covered her mouth and fled the dining hall. Lily and Marlene glanced at each other, then jumped up immediately to follow her. What do you think's up with her? Peter asked. Remus shrugged. Girl stuff. They did not find out until later that evening. Mary was not in the common room, but Lily came down looking for a stray cardigan she had left somewhere. Darren dumped her, she said gravely to Remus. She's a complete wreck, poor thing. Right before the holidays, Remus said, shocked. Bit harsh. Yeah, Lily replied sadly. Said he couldn't be bothered waiting around for her while she's at school all year. Wants a girlfriend closer to home. I think she's well shot of him. He sounds horrible. Bet Marlene's happy, though, Remus grinned. Won't have to hear about it anymore. Don't bet on it. Lily's face was grim. She hasn't shut up about how much she loved him yet. Poor thing. Remus dug around in his pocket and withdrew his last sugar quill. Give her this. Tell her I hope she feels better, yeah? You're so sweet, Remus. Lily kissed him on the cheek and then headed upstairs. She wasn't that upset when she broke up with me, Sirius muttered indignantly, moving a chess piece. Well, Remus shrugged, settling back down to the game. She dumped you, didn't she? I expect it's different when you're the one getting dumped. I wasn't that upset. I didn't think you and Mary were that serious. James yawned, playing Exploding Snap on the rug with Peter. You were only 13. 14, Sirius corrected. But I take your point. Didn't really give it a fair go, did we? You weren't very mature about it, Peter murmured, thumbing through his cards. No. Well, no one ever caught us snogging in a broom cupboard. You're right, Sirius snapped. Jealousy doesn't suit you, Black, Peter replied dryly. Oi! You all promised me the snogging thing was over, Remus said pointedly, giving them all dark looks. Don't knock it till you've tried it, Mooney, Peter grinned. Chapter 71, 4th Year, June. Saturday the 28th of June, 1975. Hiya, Remus. Lily startled him as he was leaving the hospital wing. He had just had his final check-up with Madame Pomfrey before school ended. Hello, he said nervously. What you doing here? Dropping these off for Professor Slughorn. She raised a large jar of something that looked like purple frog spawn. We've been doing healing potions in Slug Club this term. Wait here, I'll walk back with you. She disappeared inside the infirmary, and he waited, trying not to look too suspicious. He hated being seen near the hospital. Lily finally came out with a breezy smile. Thanks. What were you doing in there? Nothing. A hex went wrong. Oh gosh, what happened? Rather not say. He raised an eyebrow suggestively, hoping that she would get the picture. Fortunately, her mind went elsewhere. Was it Potter again? Ugh! He hexed Sev last week with something that made his neck swell up like a life ring. Yeah. James is good at engorgement charms. Remus grinned. Well, I wouldn't have thought he'd hex the people who were supposedly his friends, Lily replied primly. It wasn't him, Remus replied, annoyed. He was keen not to badmouth James in front of Lily after the mix-up back in January. Black, then, Lily shrugged. He's just as bad. I've no idea why everyone fancies him. So, big plans for the summer? Lily changed tact, perhaps realising that Remus didn't particularly enjoy her tirades on the other marauders. Nah, Remus shook his head. Usual stuff, probably. Homework. You? I'm going to visit Marlene in July. We're trying to get Mary to come. How is she? Mary had been absent from every meal since the big break-up, and had barely left the girls' dorms as far as Remus could tell. Better, Lily nodded sadly. She can go a few hours without crying anyway. Keeps playing depressing Dusty Springfield albums, though. They reached the portrait of the fat lady, and bumped into Peter, and Desdemona Lewis, of course. They were in a tight embrace, arms wrapped around each other, murmuring between kisses. I'll miss you, she sighed. I'll miss you more, Peter said. Will you write? Every day. Remus made a loud retching noise, which made Lily giggle, but earned a furious frown from Peter. They quickly climbed through the portrait and left the lovebirds to it. Gryffindor Tower was complete anarchy when they reached it, as was usual on the last day of term. Students crawled under the tables looking for lost things, ran around collecting up cards and game pieces. Shouts of, Accio left trainer, or Accio wristwatch, rang out as everyone scrambled to pack at the very last minute. Remus couldn't help but wonder whether every common room was undergoing the same pandemonium. Surely the organised Ravenclaws were in a much better state. Sirius and James were not doing much to help the process. They were covertly levitating various items from behind one of the large armchairs, sniggering to each other happily. Remus smiled, thinking again how much he would miss everything. You two! Lily scolded them, marching over, holding her own wand up. Sirius laughed and ducked behind James. Oh, come on, Evans! Just a bit of last day's high spirits. Why can't you just leave people be, Black? Why can't you leave us be? He retorted, firing green sparks at the ceiling from behind James's back. You're not a prefect yet, you know. Ooh, just wait till I am, she said, trying to throw a jinx at Sirius. It hit James instead, and turnips immediately sprung from his ears. The shocked expression on his face was so comical that Remus collapsed into giggles. Well, that wasn't very goody-goody, Sirius laughed, transfiguring a nearby lamp into a flock of birds, which fluttered screeching around the room, adding to the chaos. Lily's next move was to shoot a jelly legs jink at James, causing him to fall on the floor in a heap, still clutching his turnip ears. With him out of the way and Sirius exposed, Lily disabled him with a binding spell, then turned to Remus. Help me sort all of this out, will you? Aw. 'Kay, fine. Remus sighed, still wiping tears of laughter away from his eyes. Together they managed to restore the common room to order, detransfigure the lamp, repair the stinge marks on the ceiling, and calm down a wailing first year who had lost her cat. Lily left Remus to handle James and Sirius, who were in a real state now. Isn't she marvellous? James grinned dopily as Remus tried to help him into a nearby chair, his legs still unsteady, folding underneath him. Yeah, a real charmer, Sirius grumbled, struggling to get free from his body bind. You two are just lucky she only uses her power for good, Remus chastised them. You'd be no match for her if she decided to really start breaking the rules. Finite. He pointed his wand at Sirius, who was finally released. He rubbed his arms fiercely. Can't believe you helped her, Moony. Of course I did, Remus shrugged. I'm terrified of her. Sunday, the 29th of June, 1975. Oi, you two, we'll miss the train, Remus huffed, climbing the stairs to their dorm for what felt like the 100th time that morning. Their trunks had already been transported down to Hogsmeade Station by some magical mechanism, and McGonagall had given the 10-minute warning, but James and Sirius had vanished again. He found them sitting on James's bed, which was stripped of bedclothes, head bowed over something small Sirius was holding cupped carefully in his hands. The room felt horribly hollow and empty without all of the marauders' things in it. The two black-haired boys turned towards him as he entered, and Remus felt he had intruded on something very private. He hung back a moment, awkwardly. "Sorry, Mooney," James smiled, getting off the bed. "We're ready, yeah, Black?" "Yeah, of course." Sirius got up too. He had a dazed, distracted expression, which made Remus ache on the inside. "Look what James gave me," Sirius said as he crossed the room. He held out something round and silver. Remus took it. It was warm from Sirius's hands. It was a compact mirror, beautifully etched with an ornate filigree-style design. Remus turned it over, snapping it open. "Very, pretty?" James laughed. "It's magic. Belonged to my granddad. Look." He opened his own identical compact and looked into it. Remus looked down at Sirius's mirror and was amazed to see James's bespectacled face grinning back at him. "So we can keep in touch over summer." "Oh my God," Remus exclaimed. "That's amazing." "I know," James nodded, closing his compact and slipping it into his back pocket. "Wish I could have got them for all of us, but they're old family heirlooms and there's only 2. "Oh, of course." Remus handed the corresponding case back to Sirius. There was an awkward few seconds before Remus cleared his throat. "Come on, McGonagall's going to hex us into next week if we miss the carriages." They did make the carriages and the train in time and piled into their usual compartment. Remus was most disconcerted to find that this year their little carriage space was packed full of people. Not only the 4 marauders, but of course Desdemona was invited to join them. Remus had still not heard her say more than 2 words, possibly because her lips were so often occupied. Mary joined them too, at Sirius's request. He had been paying her a good deal of attention over the past few days, and it was obvious she was rather enjoying it, having recently taken a heavy knock to her confidence. With Mary, as always, was Marlene, and finally Lily, who would have been forced to sit alone otherwise. As such, it was an incredibly noisy ride back to London. Between Sirius trying to impress Mary by singing every Beatles song he knew, James switching between trying to attract Lily's attention and talk Quidditch tactics with Marlene, and Peter and Desdemona's fevered fumblings, Remus simply sat back against the window and enjoyed being among his friends for what might be the last time in a very long time. He tried not to think about the war, or who might go missing over the summer. He tried not to think about Sirius, alone and abused, in a cold London mansion. He tried not to think about Firox, off on dangerous missions for Dumbledore. He just watched his friends, their faces bright and animated, full of excitement and emotion. He rubbed the back of his head sleepily. His skinhead cut has grown out, and he had a pile of mousy brown curls now. He might not cut it again. He wouldn't let Matron do it, he decided. It was better longer, softer. He didn't want to look hard and mean anymore. He didn't feel he needed to. Smiling to himself, Remus drifted off to sleep. 4th year, some hours later. Remus dragged his trunk from the bus and down the long road to St. Edmund's all by himself. It was the first year Matron hadn't met him at King's Cross. She'd sent him his bus fare ahead of time and told him he was old enough now to make the journey alone. Perhaps she hoped he wouldn't come back at all. But where else would he go? He entered the cold grey building with a sense of resignation, signed himself in at the front desk, and made his way to his dorm. It was a bright, warm day, and he could hear most of the other boys shouting outside. He was hot and sticky, and hoping for a shower and maybe a few quiet hours alone, in which he could unpack and maybe get started on his summer reading. But as he entered the dorm room, he found he was not entirely alone. There was a boy sitting on the bed adjacent to his. He must have been new. Remus didn't recognise him from last year. He looked about 15 or 16, and wore a light blue vest top with orange piping and long flared denim jeans. His socks didn't match. His hair was blonde and curly, his face sunny and a snub nose. He had a casual, friendly air. "Oh, hello," Remus said quietly, dragging his trunk over to his bed. "All right?" the other boy greeted him. He had a chipped front tooth and a lopsided grin that made Remus want to smile back at him. His hair was longish and fell into his eyes. "You're the kid that goes to the fancy school all year, aren't ya? Name's Grant." Remus nodded politely. "Remus, nice to meet you." "Blimey!" Grant cracked an even wider smile. "They said you was posh. Want me to bow to you, my lord?" Remus returned a soft smile, unable to help himself. The other boy wasn't being rude or nasty. He forgot how much his accent had changed after 4 years at Hogwarts. "Big reader, are ya?" Grant nodded at the books that Remus was unpacking. "I get a lot of homework," Remus said, then decided to relax a bit. "And yeah, I like reading." "Cool," Grant replied. He lay back on the bed, arms behind his head, his long body stretched out, shirt rising up to expose the strip of skin just above his hips. Remus glanced at him sideways as he unpacked, trying not to look too much like he was looking. "So," Grant was saying, "what sort of music you like?" End of chapter 71.